Hey guys, Jim here with another video for you. This is Shocktober Volume 24, My Horror Blu-ray Collection Part 5, the 1990s. But before we begin, at the end of this video, if you like what you see, please consider giving me a thumbs up, a possible subscribe, but most importantly, please leave comments below. Let me know what some of your favorite movies from the 90s are in the horror genre. Now, as I said in the introduction, this is the fifth part of my horror movie Blu-ray collection. The first installment was the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and then I broke the 80s up into 3 installments, and now we're up to the 90s. We've got about 60 titles here, so we're going to jam right through this. We're not going to go through plots. I may give you a brief synopsis about how I feel about the film, but that'll be about it. This is not a ranking video of any kind. This is simply the films that I own on Blu-ray from the 1990s. I am not including any DVDs. At the end of the month, I am going to do a top 25 favorite horror movie from my collection, and I will be including some DVDs with that. So without further ado, we're going to jam right through this. We're going to start in 1990, but before we begin, I do have a little bit of housekeeping to begin. I forgot one film on the last installment, so I want to give that title a little bit of love right now, and that is The Lair of the White Worm. This is my Vestron Steelbook. This film came out in 1988, and it stars Amanda Donahoe and a very young Hugh Grant. Very, very bizarre movie. So now that we got that one out of the way, let's begin. So we're going to start off in 1990. We've got a little nice variety here, so let's begin. The first one is Brain Dead, starring Bill Pullman and Bill Paxton. This is from the Corman Factory. Very under-the-radar, mind-twisting movie. I absolutely love this film. Then we've got some sequels for you. The first one, Child's Play 2. This one is directed by John LaFia, and it stars Jenny Agutter and Alex Vincent, reprising his role from the original film. And of course, Brad Dourif as the voice of Chucky. Speaking of Brad Dourif, how about Exorcist 3? Starring George C. Scott and the aforementioned Brad Dourif. This one is written and directed by William Peter Blatty, who wrote the original novel Exorcist, and he wrote the novel Legion, which this movie is based on. The single greatest jump scare in the 90s, without a doubt. And then we've got Tales from the Dark Side, the movie, based on the syndicated TV show. This one stars Deborah Harry and Kristen Slater, William Hickey, James Remar, Ray Don-John. Good solid cast. This is a anthology film. Not as good as Creepshow, but it's very entertaining. Then we've got Stephen King, Goodness, Misery, directed by Rob Reiner, starring James Caan, and in her Academy Award-winning performance, Kathy Bates. One of the best Stephen King movies ever. It's just masterpiece. And then we've got another Stephen King movie for you, but actually this was a miniseries. Stephen King's It. This is the 1990 miniseries starring Tim Curry, John Ritter, and Annette O'Toole, among others. This miniseries traumatized an entire generation of children, just like Salem's Lot did a decade earlier. Then we got a couple strange ones for you. The first one, Sundown, The Vampire in Retreat, directed by Anthony Hickox, starring David Carradine, Bruce Campbell, Deborah Foreman, and the late great Emmett Walsh, among others. This is a comedy western vampire movie. It's a lot of fun. It's a B movie, but it's a lot of fun. All right, let's make some adjustments here. Sorry, guys. And the last film from 1990, and certainly not the least, Clive Barker's Nightbreed, starring Craig Sheffer, Ann Bobby, and David Cronenberg as Decker. This movie was a huge flop when it came out. It has gotten cult status since then. It's my favorite Clive Barker film. Okay, now we're into 1991. We're going to start off with some more sequels. The first one, Child's Play 3. This one is directed by Jack Bender. We got a new kid playing Andy this time. It's Justin Whalen. Perry Reeves from Entourage is also in this film. And, of course, Brad Dourif does the voice of Chucky. Then we've got really bizarre stuff for you here. Bride of the Reanimator. Directed by Brian Usna. And starring Jeffrey Combs and Bruce Abbott, reprising their roles from the original film. Nowhere near as good as the original classic from Stuart Gordon. However, I really do still enjoy this movie quite a bit. And then we've got Warlock, directed by Steve Miner. Sorry, I'm trying to keep things from falling over here. Directed by Steve Miner. Starring the late great Julian Sands, Richard E. Grant, and Laurie Singer, among others. The original Warlock is a lot of fun. We've got Wes Craven's People Under the Stairs, starring Ving Rhames, Everett McGill, and Wendy Roby, among others. Like I said, this was directed by Wes Craven. Written and directed by Wes Craven, I should say. Truly, truly bizarre movie, but my God, is this movie entertaining. It is so much fun. And the final film from 1991, and it's a biggie. Winner of Best Picture, Jonathan Demme's Silence of the Lambs. Starring Jodie Foster and Anthony Hopkins in their Academy Award-winning roles, and co-starring Scott Glenn, Ted Levine, and Anthony Heald, among others. One of the best horror movies from the 90s. It won Best Picture, as I said, including, it won the top 5 Oscars. Best Picture, Best Director, Best Screenplay, Best Actor, Best Actress. That does not happen very often, especially for a horror film. Okay, we are now into 1992. And we have Brian De Palma's Raising Cain. This is more of a psychological thriller than a horror movie per se. The best thing about this movie is John Lithgow. He plays a character with about 5-6 different personalities. He's fantastic in this movie. The rest of the movie, not so much. Then we got a couple of Stephen King properties for you. The first one, The Lawnmower Man, written and directed by Brett Leonard, and starring Pierce Brosnan, Jeff Fahey, Jeffrey Lewis, and the lovely Jenny Wright. Where's Jenny Wright? I miss Jenny Wright. Lawnmower Man, Cheese Fest, has not aged well. I still love it. Then we've got Sleepwalkers, the only film that Stephen King wrote the screenplay directly for the film. This is not based on any previous material. Directed by Mick Garris, starring Brian Krause, Matt Amick, and Alice Krige, among others. Again, truly, truly bizarre movie. Ugh. And then we've got Pet Sematary 2. Oh my God. This movie sucks. Clancy Brown is the only thing that's worthwhile about this movie. The rest of it, god-awful. We're not going to talk about it anymore. Then we've got, speaking of horrible, Waxwork 2, Lost in Time. Directed by Anthony Hickox. And starring Zach Galligan and, what the hell's that guy's name? Alexander Godunov from Die Hard. Horrible, horrible movie. And then we're back to my Hellraiser box set with Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth. There's Pinhead right there. Starring Doug Bradley, reprising his role as Pinhead. The weakest of the trilogy, in my opinion, but it's still entertaining. And going from Hellraiser, Clive Barker, we're going to Candyman, also based on a Clive Barker story. In this case, it was a story called The Forbidden. This one is written and directed by Barnard Rose, and it stars the incredible Tony Todd in the title role, Cassie Lemons, and the beautiful Virginia Madsen. Creepy-ass movie. I love it. And the last film from 1992 is Bram Stoker's Dracula. Directed by Francis Ford Coppola, starring Gary Oldman, Winona Ryder, Anthony Hopkins, Keanu Reeves et al. Great movie. Some of the performances are uneven, but Gary Oldman gives a great performance as Dracula. Okay, 1993. We're going to go with Fire in the Sky, directed by Robert Lieberman, and with a great ensemble cast: D.B. Sweeney, Craig Sheffer, Robert Patrick, Peter Berg, Henry Thomas, James Garner. Really solid science fiction thriller. But the reason why I included it is because there is one sequence in this movie that is pure nightmare fuel. I mean, it is just, once you see that scene, you'll never forget it. Great movie. Then we've got California, directed by Dominic Sena, and starring Brad Pitt in a great role. He's fantastic in this movie. David Duchovny, Juliette Lewis, and Michelle Forbes, among others. Solid, slow burn thriller. Then we've got some Stephen King properties for you. The first one is Needful Things, directed by Fraser Heston, who is Charlton Heston's son, starring Ed Harris, Bonnie Bedelia, J.T. Walsh, and the wonderful Max von Sydow as Leland Gaunt. More of a dark comedy than a horror movie, but again, very entertaining. Then we've got another Stephen King property, The Dark Half. This one is directed by George Romero, and it stars Timothy Hutton, Amy Madigan, and Michael Rooker, among others. Again, not one of my favorite Stephen King movies, but it is solid. Next, we've got Return of the Living Dead 3. Yeah, see, I've got Return of the Living Dead, and I've got Part 3, but I do not own Part 2. And this one actually plays it straight compared to the other movies. This one stars Melinda Clarke and Kent McCord from Adam 12. Not a great movie, but it's entertaining. Speaking of not great movies, we're back to the Warlock collection with the second installment, Warlock: The Armageddon. This one directed by Anthony Hickox, and Julian Sands came back for it, but this movie sucks. And I'm not even going to mention the third Warlock movie, because that movie's not worth mentioning. But then again, I guess I just did. Then we've got, my favorite, I mean that sarcastically, Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday. My least favorite Friday the 13th movie, and it's not even close. I would much rather watch Jason Takes a Boat Ride than this one. The first 10 minutes of this movie is phenomenal. The opening of this movie is great. It really is. It's everything else that comes after it. I just do not like this movie, and I never will. And the last movie from 1993, Sam Raimi's Army of Darkness, or Evil Dead 3. Starring Bruce Campbell and Beth Davids. Absolutely love this screwball comedy. There is not a thing in this movie that is scary. This is a pure slapstick farce. Okay, we're moving right along, guys. We're at 1994. I've only got a couple titles from this year. The first, because it's part of that multi-pack, here's the disc. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Directed by Kenneth Branagh and starring Kenneth Branagh and Robert De Niro, among others. Not as good as Dracula. It's okay, but it's not good. I mean, it's well made, I should say. It's just, it's boring. Then we've got Night of the Demons 2, directed by Brian Trenchard Smith, who is most known for doing a bunch of Ozploitation movies, starring Bobby Jacoby and Zoe Trilly. I have no idea, because to be honest, I still have not watched this movie. I have no idea if it's any good or not. I bought it really cheap. And then we've got Donald Sutherland, the late great Donald Sutherland, in The Puppet Masters, directed by Stuart Orme. And again, solid cast: Julie Warner, Yaphet Kotto, Will Patton, among others. This is a Body Snatchers ripoff. It's based on a Robert Heinlein book, but it is just a Invasion of the Body Snatchers ripoff. Also starring Donald Sutherland. You're better off watching the 1978 Body Snatchers. The last movie from 94 is, boy, Phantasm 3, Lord of the Dead. Starring Michael Baldwin, Reggie Bannister, and of course, Angus Scrimm as the tall man. Entertaining movie. It's a big drop in quality from the second movie. Okay, please don't fall. All right, now we're at 1995. And we have Species. Directed by Roger Donaldson. And again, killer cast. Michael Madsen, Ben Kingsley, Alfred Molina, Forrest Whitaker. Natasha Henstridge made her movie debut in this movie. B movie, A budget, a lot of fun. Then we've got another anthology movie for you. Tales from the Hood. This one is directed by Rusty Cundiff. And it stars Corbin Burnson and David Alan Grier and the wonderful, wonderful, wonderful Clarence Williams III from the Mod Squad. Again, like I said, this is an anthology movie. It more or less centers on the African-American experience, which is kind of refreshing because you really don't get that too much in horror movies. And again, great movie. It's not as good as Creepshow. I'd much rather watch this one than Creepshow 2. I really would. I'd put this one on the same level as Tales from the Dark Side. And then we've got one of the most entertaining movies of the 90s. Tales from the Crypt, Demon Knight. Directed by the great director Ernest Dickerson. He's just such an underrated director. And starring Billy Zane, William Sadler, Jada Pinkett Smith, and the late great Dick Miller, among others. Billy Zane gives a performance for the ages in this movie. He is so over the top. He is so much fun. I love, love, love this movie. Then we got a couple of dark ones for you. The first one, John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness. The third chapter in his Apocalypse trilogy, following Prince of Darkness and The Thing, of course. And again, great cast. Sam Neill, Jurgen Prochnow, David Warner, Charlton Heston, John Glover, Julie Carmen. Yeah, great cast in this movie. I don't like this movie as much as most, but I do really appreciate it, and there are some really, really wild visuals in this movie. So yeah, it's definitely interesting. It's a little too bizarre for me. Speaking of bizarre, but I love this one. Clive Barker's Lord of Illusions. Based on his short story, The Last Illusion, and starring Scott Bakula, Famke Janssen, Kevin J. O'Connor, and the wonderful Daniel Von Bargen as Nix. He's the villain, and he's fantastic. And the last one from 1996, or 95, I'm sorry, and it's a great one. David Fincher's Seven. Starring Morgan Freeman, Brad Pitt, Gwyneth Paltrow, and Kevin Spacey, among others. I prefer this movie to Silence of the Lambs, believe it or not. Silence of the Lambs is a better movie. I prefer this one. All right, we're getting down to our last stack here, guys. Let's go with 1996. We're going to start off with Robert Rodriguez's From Dusk Till Dawn, starring George Clooney, Quentin Tarantino, Harvey Keitel, Juliette Lewis, I should say, and Cheech Marin in 3 different roles. Crazy, crazy movie. I absolutely love this movie. I'll never forget seeing it theatrically. It's such a fun film. Then we've got Screamers, starring Peter Weller and Jennifer Rubin, among others. This one's directed by Christian Duguay. And again, this is a science fiction horror film, kind of like Terminator. Entertaining. B movie, entertaining. Not so entertaining on this one, though. The follow-up, The Demon Knight, Tales from the Crypt, presents Bordello of Blood, directed by Gilbert Adler, and starring Dennis Miller, Erica Laniak, Angie Everhart, Chris Sarandon, and Corey Feldman. I hate this movie. I've always hated it. I will always hate it. But I don't hate this one. Peter Jackson's The Frighteners, starring Michael J. Fox, Trini Alvarado, and say it with me, Crazy Gary Busey's son, Jake. Absolutely love this movie. Here's some sacrilege for you. I prefer this to Ghostbusters. I just do. I think this movie's fantastic. And the last film from 1996, and it was huge. From my Scream set, the original Scream. Directed by Wes Craven and starring David Arquette, Neve Campbell, Courtney Cox, Matthew Lillard. Yeah, great movie. It revitalized Wes Craven's career. It definitely revitalized the horror genre in general. It really did. Yeah, love Scream. Okay, we were at 1997. We only got 3 movies from 97. The first one is Scream 2. Directed by Wes Craven, same cast. We got to speed this up. Next, we got a couple of science fiction horror movies for you. The first one, Event Horizon, starring Sam Neill, Lawrence Fishburne, Kathleen Quinlan, and what's his face? I forget his name now. Never mind. Directed by Paul Anderson. Great movie. I love this movie. This is basically a gothic horror movie, haunted house movie set in space. And Sam Neill's creepy as hell. Love it, love it, love it. And the last one on that list, technically it's not a horror movie, but it's pretty damn gory, so that's why I included it. Paul Verhoeven's Starship Troopers. Starring Casper Van Dien, Dina Meyer, Denise Richards, Clancy Brown, and Michael Ironside, among others. Absolute batshit crazy movie. I love it to death. 1997. Or that was 97. Now we're at 98. 98, we've got, boy, Phantasm 4, Oblivion. And again, starring Reggie Bannister, Michael Baldwin, and Angus Scrimm as the tall man. This is where the series really goes downhill for me. This movie's okay. I mean, it's watchable. It's just not very good. And the last installment, Ravager, which is coming up, is terrible. This one's not terrible, other than terribly great. Oh my God, I love this movie. Stephen Sommers directed Deep Rising, starring Treat Williams, Famke Janssen, Wes Studi, so many great actors in this. Kevin J. O'Connor. It's just such a great movie. This is a kaiju movie, and it's turned up to 11. This movie is so much fun. It's very bloody. Some of the effects have definitely aged poorly because of the CG of the 90s. Doesn't matter. This movie is absolutely crazy fun. Check it out, check it out, check it out. Then we've got a couple of vampire movies for you. The first one is John Carpenter's Vampires, starring James Woods, Daniel Baldwin, and Cheryl Lee. Again, solid movie. It's not one of Carpenter's best, but it is entertaining. And James Woods, you can tell he's having a great time playing this character. And the last one, and again, not necessarily a horror film, but I included it anyways. The original, Blade, starring Wesley Snipes and the late, great Chris Christopherson, who just passed away, directed by Stephen Norrington. What can you say about Blade? The first 2 Blade movies are friggin' awesome. I don't care what anybody says. They are just friggin' awesome. Real quick aside, when I went and saw Deadpool versus Wolverine recently, without a doubt, one of the biggest reactions from the crowd was when Wesley Snipes walked in as Blade. It was so great to see him again in that costume. Love it, love it, love it. And we are at 1999. We only got 4 left. The first one is Deep Blue Sea, directed by Rennie Harlan, starring Thomas Jane, Saffron Burrows, LL Cool J, and the wonderful Samuel L. Jackson. Again, not necessarily a horror movie, but what the hell. It's a Jaws ripoff. I kept it in here anyways. It's a lot of fun. Then we've got Ravenous. This one's bizarre as hell, man. Directed by Antonia Bird. This one stars Robert Carlyle, Guy Pearce, Jeffrey Davies, Jeffrey Jones, John Spencer. Great cast in this movie. This is about cannibals. It's the only way to describe it. It's a cannibal movie. It's really bizarre. It's a dark comedy. It gets under your skin. It's really good. And then we've got House on Haunted Hill, directed by William Malone and starring Jeffrey Lewis, Famke Janssen, Ty Diggs, Bridget Wilson, Chris Kattan. I mean, yeah, this movie's got a fun cast. Fun movie. It's a remake of the old William Castle movie from the 50s starring Vincent Price. This was part of that Dark Castle Entertainment wave of films in the 90s and early 2000s. I still think this one's the best out of all of them. I really enjoyed this movie. We're going to end it on this one. Lake Placid, starring Bill Pullman, Bridget Fonda, Oliver Platt, Brendan Gleeson, and the wonderful, there she is, the wonderful late great Betty White. Directed by Steve Miner. Again, not necessarily a horror movie. This is more or less a comedy. And it is so much fun. Rest in peace, Betty White. She was definitely a national treasure, and she is phenomenal in this movie as the old lady. She is just so foul-mouthed and hilarious in this film. She was the biggest surprise about it when it came out. And I still love it. I just think it's such a fun movie. And that's the end of this installment of Shocktober. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please give me a thumbs up, a possible subscribe. Most importantly, leave comments below. Let me know how you feel about the 90s in general as far as horror goes, and let me know what some of your favorite movies from that decade are. I'm going to be doing another video later on today. I was tagged in a video from my good friend Carlos from Eastwood for Life fan, and I'm going to be posting a video of what my horror movie lineup would be for Halloween. So that'll be coming out later on this afternoon. I hope everybody's having a great day. We'll see you on the next one.